6:30, and I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, and the agenda was properly posted, so we will first stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if you're following along, we are number 4, public appearances, public opportunity to speak. We ask that you hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes. We will start with individuals in the room and then move to anyone who is on the Zoom call. So first up is Mark Spahos.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm here tonight to humbly express my interest in being considered for the 7th open trustee seat. As I think I have proven in this past election, I'm not a polished politician or an expert at every issue or many, but I am someone who deeply cares about our community and those that live in it. Cottage Grove is home. It's where we build our lives, raise our kids, and look out for one another. Even if we don't always know each other's names, we still exchange a wave or a kind word in passing. It's a place where small, meaningful moments, like the annual Fireman's Festival or a Girl Scout cookie stand outside the Piggly Wiggly, remind us of a deeper sense of community that ties us all together. I've followed the board's work for over a year, and I recognize the responsibility that comes with each decision that every one of you make. It would be a true privilege to help support that work and contribute to the future of a village I genuinely care about. My service to the community is driven by a genuine desire to give back and help others. As chaplain of our American Legion post, I've seen firsthand the strength of our community's spirit from both the young and the old, and the impact we can have when we all come together. I also buy Girl Scout cookies every year, not just for my family, but to be donated to the food pantry. It's a very small thing, but I find that the little things in life, when somebody's down or really struggling, can really make a difference in their day. These are just a couple of ways I'm committed to supporting and giving back to the place I'm proud to call home. I come to this with a willingness to listen, to learn, and to work alongside others who care as much as I do. I don't pretend to have all the answers. Sometimes I don't even know all the questions. But I do believe that asking the right questions of the right individuals and gathering facts and data with humility and curiosity is always a great place to start. My grandfather was a farmer and he was a teacher in life. Back when I was in high school, I worked up on the farm every summer. He'd tell me, you don't need to shout to be heard on a farm. Out here, leadership isn't about making noise, it's about showing up before the sun rises, fixing what's broken, and doing the job whether anyone's watching or not. It's in the neighbor who plows our driveway without asking in a deep storm after we've birthed a calf the night before, or the old timer who's our neighbor that teaches us how to mend a fence just with wire and grit when we have nothing else to fix it with. The best leaders I've known don't talk much, but when they do, it matters, because they've earned their respect through hard work, not headlines. That's the kind of leadership I believe in: quiet, steady, and real. You can expect this type of leadership from me if you appoint me to this open seat. It would be a privilege to serve our village in this way, and I'd be grateful for the opportunity to give back to a community that's given my wife and I so much. Thank you for your consideration of me in this role.
All right, is there anyone else in the room? Is there anyone on Zoom? Okay. All right, then we'll move on to number 5, discuss and consider the minutes of the village board meeting on April 7th. Those meeting minutes are linked in the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
If there's a motion by Heidi and a second by Chris, is there any discussion on the item? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Yes.
What did we say?
Well, that's fine. Motion carries. All right, we're on number 6, unfinished business. This is discuss and consider resolution 2025-07, the providing the sale of approximately 3.335 general obligatory promissory notes. I'll turn this over to Cam first and then over to Greg.
Greg, I'll let you kick it off. Thanks. Good evening. I'm going to share my screen and just bring up the document that was in your packet, the pre-sale report. I just want to recap kind of action that's occurred on this topic by the village board previously and kind of why we're back here again this evening. So back on March 17th, the village board passed a resolution to proceed with financing the 2025 capital projects. And that resolution was what was called a parameters resolution. It established certain financial benchmarks that had to be met. And if those were met on the day of sale of the notes, then the authority to accept the sale results was delegated to village staff. So it kind of gave us some flexibility to sell on non-meeting nights of the village board, and also built in a hard not to exceed true interest costs for the notes. If market conditions became unfavorable and exceeded that amount, the sale legally couldn't be awarded. So that was kind of how this was set up to proceed. So everything was kind of proceeding on schedule and on plan, but then, as you probably all heard over the past couple of weeks, there's been a fair amount of volatility in the market. So I'm going to bring up a chart that I kind of that summarizes what has occurred in the municipal bond market just since the beginning of April. And so what this chart shows is it's a national scale that's tracked by Bloomberg. It shows the rate on a 10-year maturity for a AAA rated entity. So the Village of Cottage Grove is rated AA, so just slightly below AAA levels. But you'll see on April 1st, things were kind of stable and kind of on a positive trajectory. Things went down kind of on the end of the week of April 4th. And then the date that the village board was scheduled to sell was on April 9th, which is all the way up here on this chart. And so we saw a very rapid escalation in rates in the bond market. Really haven't seen that level of volatility since the onset of the pandemic. And when I say volatility, it means this indice was changing by 30 to 40 basis points a day. So 1 basis point is 0.01%. So to see that level of swings from one day to another, is not something we typically see. So we were tracking this, and actually in consultation with Matt and Cameron, really by the end of close of business on the 8th, we had decided we were going to postpone the sale, which I think in hindsight proved to be a good idea, because the next day, the day of sale, things just kind of continued to go up. They went back down, they went back, yields went up again, and now they've kind of started to stabilize. And this is through data from last week. We had sales conducted today, and rates were more in line with kind of where we've seen them towards the end of last week into this week. So kind of those significant swings of volatility have kind of subsided. So really that parameter that was established in the resolution was a true interest cost of not to exceed 3.64%. We've kind of seen rates move a little bit higher than that. And so in discussion with Matt and Cameron, we decided there were two choices. You could keep that parameters resolution kind of intact, or since these projects have been approved and are proceeding, we wanted to kind of proceed and get the sale conducted. So the resolution that's on your agenda rescinds the previous parameters resolution, so that's no longer in effect. You're essentially adopting, through this resolution tonight, authorization to proceed with the exact same borrowing amount that was previously authorized, no change, and we'll just conduct the sale on May 5th, kind of your next regularly scheduled board meeting. So that's kind of what has transpired, kind of why we're back here. I'll just kind of briefly go back through kind of the financial impact. So the project list was incorporated again. So the projects in Table 2 under year 2025 show what are being funded. It's a mixture of vehicle and equipment, some road, street, and trail improvements, some specific park improvement projects are identified. And then on the utilities, for the water utility, there's some well improvements and some public works equipment. And on the sewer side, it's some public works equipment as well, the sewer utility share. So the borrowing amount is identical. You're not borrowing any more, any less than what had been authorized back in March. We updated kind of the estimated interest rates that are included in the analysis. So this is kind of 0.5% higher than what we're seeing in the market today, just to give you an idea. We just kind of wanted to give kind of a higher estimate in terms of if things continue to go up, but as I said, they've stabilized. So this is based on a true interest cost of about 4.18%. So when I compare that back to kind of what the maximum true interest cost was under the parameters resolution, if rates, were at the levels that we forecasted here in this report, that would be about $92,400 more in interest expense over 10 years. If that true interest cost was closer to 3.9%, that would only be about $46,200 more in interest expense than what we'd estimated in March. Right now, based on market conditions today, we're kind of in between those two numbers. It's not going to be 3.9%. It's not going to be 3.64, kind of in the middle. So interest rates have moved up kind of since March, which they can do. But again, we had high volatility. You were scheduled to be in the market at the highest point that we've seen this month, canceled the sale, and now we're just kind of going forward again now that things have stabilized. So that's kind of where we were, what's transpired, and kind of what the proposed change is in the timeline going forward. So I'll pause and see if staff has other comments or if there's questions on the pre-sale report.
Yeah, Cameron, do you have any comments to add?
I don't have any comments. Oh, one minor comment. Typically, when you see market fluctuations like this and a parameter sale was adopted, that's where us as staff, we felt more comfortable bringing it back to the board as opposed to waiting for it to be within the parameters and executing the sale. So this was just a little bit of a, just wanted to bring back to make sure there was, consensus with the board.
Allow comments from board members.
So this takes away all parameters. There isn't a parameter in terms of a cap on a rate?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so what that does is the May 5th, the bid results will come back and Greg will either recommend or not recommend going with the lowest bidder as far as true interest costs.
And if hopefully not, if the same thing that we saw 2 weeks ago kind of transpires again in early May, we can just postpone again. So, I mean, you still have that flexibility. But, what we were seeing the week you were scheduled to be in the market was, highly volatile conditions. So we thought it was in the village's best interest not to be in the market that week.
That was a good call, right? But again, this is one of the main reasons why controlling the amount of debt the village takes on is really important, because you're at the risk of the markets.
Sure.
And markets right now are extremely volatile. Who knows what the next 6, 12, 24 months will bring. So, I mean, I would like to see us migrate towards covering more of what we're talking about with these projects out of our levy versus debt. But again, I guess at this point, we've got the projects, we've identified it, and I certainly understand the direction here.
Hey, Paula, did you have a comment?
So what, if we get to May 5th and it shoots up again, what length of time before we have to act and do something? I know we talked about projects that are being bid out and different things, what's our date certain?
So from a cash flow perspective, we'll be okay. So what this pretty much would do is it would change. We would likely have to update the issuance documents with Corals and say that we're reimbursing ourselves with a higher percentage of the proceeds of the debt. But because we have the strength of all the village funds, water, sewer, the TID funds, we can cash flow these projects for a relatively lengthy period of time. However, without replenishing those, it will create some structural issues.
Moving on to the side of the room, any comments? Otherwise, this is a discuss and consider.
I would make the motion to approve Resolution 2025-07, providing the sale of a promissory note.
Abstain, motion carries. New business, we kind of lump A, B, and C together here. So these are discuss and consider resolutions for appreciation of service, and I know Heidi spent some time working on them. If you want to introduce them for us.
Sure, thank you. As all of you know, sitting here, it does take an extraordinary level of commitment and to our community to serve on a village board. Takes a significant amount of time and dedication to research issues and act here on behalf of our community. So I wanted to express that appreciation to each of the board members that are now free off doing something else on their Monday night.
Just a quick question. Do we still do some type of gift or something from the village? We did that way back when. Didn't we do like a gift card or? Okay, this is the early 20. Matt, I think you were there. That was 2011. Do you remember that? Because I remember getting a gift card, and when I got appointed back to the board, I gave the gift card back.
That's,
Do you still have it? We can add that.
I think it caused more issues than just
Okay.
what to do and
Okay, I
who to
just-
do it with and
I just
then-
wanted to, if it was still a tradition.
They're going to get a piece of paper.
Okay.
Yes. We can put it on nice cardstock, though. So these are discussed and considers for John Williams, Lorraine Gage, and Sarah Valencia.
Can
Well,
we
I-
move all three? Oh,
I
sorry.
would like to say thank you to the Dean of the Village Board, Heidi Murphy, for putting this all together. And I will make a motion to approve the resolutions for John Williams, Laureen Gage, and Sarah Valencia.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Chris and a second by Paula. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion's carry. All right, so we're on now number 7D, discuss and consider the village board's options for how to fill the vacant trustee position. So Rick and Larry have put together a memo that's linked in the agenda that go over the various options that we can consider tonight and how we would like to appoint someone. And I'll let Rick kind of walk through that a little bit.
Yes, so I think there are three basic options. So one, you could call a special election to have the voters decide who would fill the vacant seat on the board. There aren't any upcoming elections, so I think the next one would be February, potentially. So it would just be a single election for a village trustee position, nothing else would be on the ballot. The other option would be you can appoint somebody to fill the vacancy. That process you can kind of shape how that process goes, whether it's you put advertisements out there and see who applies and consider it in a month. People can also reach out to interested applicants. But basically, the village board would then just vote on who it wants to appoint to fill that vacant role. The third option would be you don't fill it, and then you spend the next year as a 6-member board. Maybe not the preferred option, just because you get 3 votes and then there's no tie. But obviously, it's up in your discretion.
Okay, I'll open it up for comments. Chris?
I think we should probably appoint. I don't think a special election is a good idea. I think that would be a tremendous waste of money for a term that's going to end up being like 5 months long.
Is there agreement on this side?
Just a question. If for some reason we were 3-3, like in terms of any sort of decision making, like approving a budget, if we were to lock 3-3, does it like revert to this year's budget? Like what are the practical
So
issues that could happen?
there's no for the budget, right? There's nothing like that in state statute or anything like that. So any budget for the following year has to be approved by the village board. So I guess it operates like the federal government, not like the state government.
Thank you. I would just like to throw an idea out there. There was one seat on the ballot that had a 42 vote difference for a person that has served the community for nearly 10 years and I think has the ability to bring us together with experience and find common ground for the benefit of the community. So with that, I would make a motion that we ask President Kel Nelson to reach out to John Williams see if he would like to fill the position.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
I don't know if we're supposed to press our button or like look at you and wave if we want to, whatever.
Press your button and wave at me.
Okay. So, I'm going to be the Cottage Grove historian for a moment. So I know that the village has done it multiple ways. So we've done appointments, we've done different things. My experience has been, we had the exact same scenario in 2011 when Diane Wiedenbeck, who was a sitting trustee, won the village president role, opened up her seat, and I was running as a trustee at that point. I was the number 4 trustee, and they appointed me since I had just run an election for that seat. And that would be my inclination, we just had the election 20 days ago. We had somebody running specifically for a trustee seat to do the same thing and take the person who ran for that role. So nothing against John, but I think, the voters had a chance to say who they wanted for a trustee, and we just had an election 20 days ago. So that would be my preference.
Is there any more discussion?
Yes, I'd like to add too, I respect John a great deal. I know that he's given more time to this community than I'm aware of, and I supported him during his election. But as Paula just mentioned, to fill a trustee spot, I would make a motion for Mark Speos.
Yeah, there's already
I
a
guess.
motion on
Oh, sorry.
on the floor.
Yeah, and just as far as like process tonight, we're not deciding on who to appoint. It's just the process for how the position would be filled. So if we're going to be doing appointments, that would be at the next meeting in May. So tonight's just a decision on what the process would be.
So the motion and second that are out there currently are to instruct me to reach out to John Williams to see if he would be interested in the appointment. Is that still appropriate, Rick?
As far as process, yes, but it wouldn't be like appointing him to the trustee position.
So if you reach out to John, are we talking about then the agenda for 2 weeks from now would be to discuss and consider that one position based on that motion?
Correct. So I think we would leave it broad as the next one would just be appoint person to fill vacant trustee position. But that's what the next meeting agenda would look like if, I guess, this is the direction that the board is going.
But wouldn't the process have to be outlined a little bit? I mean, I concur with Renee. I mean, John has done tremendous service to this community. I would say that Mark Spahos received 1,474 votes. So there's 1,474 voters in this community, more than the 6 that are here, that certainly warrant him to be considered as well, right? I mean, I think obviously there was a 42 vote difference between John and Cindy, but so how does that look, Rick, if we're to have an agenda item for next week? I mean, obviously there was a motion for Cindy to reach out. I would like to modify that motion to try to understand a little bit better what the process needs to look like.
So I guess as far as like what the process needs to look like, that's up to the village board. Like historically, what they've done is post or advertise for people that are interested to submit applications, and then there's like a 2-week application period, and then there's a vote to appoint somebody. There's like an interview process. I think, yeah, some of you were around when we did this last year. So it's a little awkward, right? Interviewing everybody in open session, but that's, I think, the last time around what was done. But that's not the way that it has to be done. If the village board decided tonight, like, okay, we want to reach out to the former president to see if he's interested. If he is, then the decision would be at the next meeting whether or not to appoint him, or you could just make it a little bit broader to see, to provide more time and just ask for anybody that's interested to apply. So it's really a village board driven process if you're going the appointment route.
Yeah, I think we just had an election. I think John obviously is a candidate that Heidi has made a motion. I think Mark has spoken very clearly of his interest, his willingness, and his commitment to serve. I think extending it and opening it beyond that at this point in time, since the election was as recent as it was, that it would narrow the focus. So I would motion that we go ahead modify the motion, that we go ahead and have Cindy reach out to John, and we discuss and consider the two prior candidates that were running for board in this most recent election, and sort of provide a little more context.
Chris, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess if we're gonna go that route, I think we might as well just open it up to whoever wants to. I don't know that we should say only these two people can apply. Seems more open and transparent to say anybody who wants to can apply.
Has there been any expressed interest from anybody in the community other than recent candidates?
Not that have reached out to me.
We also haven't advertised that there's an opening, so I don't know that anybody's gonna reach out until they know that there's something going on.
So I guess for recent historical context, the last two appointments have been advertised, and then, like Rick said, interviewed, submitted a letter of intent, and then come to it for an interview, and then appoint at the meeting. But right now, there is a motion on the table for, and I don't know, Heidi, if you are interested in amending that, and if not, we need to vote on that.
I'll just say that I have been part of that appointment process a number of times. And I think it is quite decisive and I think somewhat damaging to have a lot of people. And with a 42 vote difference, our board would look basically the same. So that's was my rationale behind that. And I think that individual brings a lot of strengths and background to the role. So, that's kind of my background on that. If I'm fine opening it up, I just think that was a very narrow margin, and that would have been, the outcome would have been similar in a mere narrow margin. So, but I can amend my motion to open it up to applicants to interview at the next meeting, and we could do a social media post to talk about that.
Chris, are you okay with that second?
Yes.
On the motion to reach out to John Williams and open up what is the motion?
Open it up to applicants.
Open it up to applicants and giving staff direction to advertise for an open trustee seat on the village board to take over my old term until next April. All those in favor?
Do you want a roll call?
Oh, yeah, roll call.
Yeah, read exactly what the motion is, please.
Okay, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit because I have that in here, but it's to reach out to John Williams to fill the open position, and advertise as well for the open seat and take applications.
Can we do a roll call vote?
I'm sorry, before, do we need a date?
That was going to be my question, if we
Yeah.
want to consider it the next meeting or the meeting after that.
So May 5th, or to give people extra time, the 19th would be the two
Do you have a
May
preference, Heidi?
meetings.
How about some more time, May 19th?
The 19th meeting? Okay. I don't think that changes much with committees or anything in general. So the May 19th meeting will conduct interviews and have an appointment consideration.
So we probably have a due date then, by the end of the day on the 14th, so we can have names and things ready in the packet, which we try to finalize by midday on the Thursday following the meeting, if that's okay.
All right, roll call vote.
Benzo?
I'm going to approve.
Aye.
Aye.
Dahl?
No.
Kel Nelson?
Aye.
Murphy?
Aye.
Severson?
No.
And Stoa?
Yes.
That's 4-2.
Motion carries. We have, moving on to item E. This is review the village's mission, vision, and value statements and potential consideration of any amendments. So we did an extensive editing last year on these 3 items. And I know that staff integrate them into their, into performance reviews and into job descriptions. And we as village board these should be some of our guiding principles. So I will entertain consideration of amendments.
Question from a newbie. Is the vision statement really geared toward the village government, the board, staff, or is it supposed to be broader and out into the community?
I think that's a great question. I think that a vision is where you want, this is my personal opinion, the vision is where you see the direction of whatever you are working on moving towards. And I think obviously that is encompassing of the community, the people that live here, the business community, the organizations that are here, but also our board and decisions we make on behalf of the community that we represent. So I see kind of the vision statement, mission vision as being really integrated and should be used, widely throughout the village.
And so, given that idea, have we done any sort of surveys into the community? Okay, so was that prior to this revision, this last revision?
Yep, so the last survey it was February through April of 2024, and these were
Okay.
revised in May of 2024.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that
Yeah.
background.
And with the new members of the board, it's always a good time to kind of revisit mission, vision, core values, and see if we want to change anything moving forward.
We did do an extensive workshop last year using the results of the survey to kind of kick off the prioritization process. And so this is kind of like the first foundation building stone that used in the past for it. So we did go through kind of line by line, redlined items and workshopped wording and wordsmithing.
And a lot of that was my fault during that meeting. I love doing these kinds of things. But staff does use them, so you'll see them when we do, as a board, performance reviews for the village administrator. You're gonna see these core values reflected in how we evaluate.
I just, my thing is like, I feel like it's a little long. So like, if I'm talking to somebody and I'm trying to kind of, the core values are, like, I would probably just hit innovation, excellence, you know what I mean? Like, because that's a lot to remember, like, if you're representing the village, but, I think they're fine the way they are.
Does anyone else have any comments on them or changes they'd like to see?
I agree with Paula too. I think it's kind of wordy. It's good information, but if we could maybe narrow it down.
Do you have specific examples of how you'd like to edit these?
I would want to read through them before I answer you.
Are there any other comments moving forward?
Just a order clarification. So we're reviewing them today and potential consideration of amendments. But if someone had an amendment that they wanted to see in the future, we'd have to bring that up through an agenda item, or we could,
Yep.
right? Okay.
Yeah, so if there are specific things you'd like to see, you could just put a memo together with your changes, and they can appear on the seconded on with the next, have it seconded, and then they can appear on the next board meeting. Thanks.
And having the values kind of listed out and a little bit more wordy that way it just provides staff more direction as to what these mean for evaluation process related items. So while it's the community, the board's adopting it as the communities, but it's from an organizational standpoint, that's how we use it internally, at least.
And this was reviewed by staff last year, and they did give feedback on all 3 of these. All right, we'll move on then to item F. Discuss and consider the request from the Cottage Grove Fire Department to place carnival workers on the lot next to the MSB. There is a map an email linked in the agenda. And Kevin Laufenberg, who's the festival director, is here. He can kind of just give us an overview of what your request is.
Yeah, Kevin Laufenberg, Fireman's Festival Chair. We're looking to hopefully have at least one more year being able to put the carnival workers up on the lot next to the Municipal Services Building. I know in the future we'll be building a police station and stuff there, but we are looking for a place for the carnival workers. We'd set them up the same as we did last year, provide them with some fencing, porta potties, a dumpster, whatnot, and put them in the center of that kind of grassy area so they're not too close to the sidewalks, not too close to the buildings and whatnot. So that's kind of my ask. It'd be from June 9th to the June 16th, so Monday to Monday.
Thanks, Kevin. Are there any comments or questions from board members?
I guess I only have one question. I mean, I think it went okay. Were there any concerns last year of that location?
Last year went just fine.
Perfect, perfect.
Thank you, Kevin, for making all the logistics work. It's a lot to coordinate. So I would make a motion to approve the request from Cottage Grove Fire Department to place carnival workers on the lot next to MSB.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion by Heidi and a second by Peter. Any more discussion on the item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right. Discuss and consider ordinance 07-2025, adopting chapters related to building codes, and that is Rick's.
Yes, so at the last board meeting, we adopted a fire inspection ordinance. So in conversations with the chief, as we were working through that ordinance, he mentioned that there were some other building codes that were not adopted by the village, but that are as part of their sort of inspection schedule. So, yeah, so we just update the ordinance to include these other administrative code chapters. So this just adopts these administrative code chapters by reference, so it cleans things up for their inspections.
Questions or comments for Rick? Otherwise, this is a discuss and consider.
I would move approval of ordinance 07-2025, amending section 130-1 of the Village of Cottage Grove Code of Ordinances.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion by Paul and a second by Heidi. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. We have discuss and consider resolution 2025-03, Earth Day Sustainability and Pollinator Protection. It's linked in the agenda. This was mine. This is a resolution that was modified from last year's resolution to include a little bit more about Earth Day and sustainability, which is coming up. The village has an e-cycle event also this coming Saturday. We have multiple sustainability activities throughout the month, and I think this is a good way to show our appreciation for Mother Earth.
I would move approval of resolution number 2025-3, Village of Cottage Grove Earth Day Sustainability and Pollinator Protection.
And I'll second. And then I just have one comment because we used to have No Mow May as part of this, but that I hear is like a debunked scientific.
That is also why I did not include No Mow May in the resolution. So that was a retracted scientific study, and I cannot vote for retracted scientific studies. But I think that this is a good compromise.
Has it been changed to LOMO, or is LOMO out too?
From a scientific perspective, the results were kind of invalid.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was,
Just created more weeds.
I think the results were manipulated a bit, I believe. So, but there is a motion by Paula and a second by Heidi. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, we are moving on to number 8, reports from village boards, commissions, and committees. First up is the Utility Commission, which is Chris.
We met on Wednesday, April 9th at 5 p.m. And we approved the minutes from the previous 2 meetings, which included a joint meeting with Public Works. We had an update on the fire hydrant water service at Fireman's Park. I apologize, I'm trying to remember what happened along with my notes. There was discussion to put in a curb stop and replace the water line. That would cost about $4,000. Kyla recommended that we integrate that into a larger project to replace the entire thing. And where do we end on that, Kyla?
More information
More
forthcoming.
information. Okay, that's what I thought. We discussed, where are we here? 7, new business. We discussed impact fees for development and water main looping. 2026 Gaston Road, there's parcels by I-94 that need 300 to 400 feet to finish the looping. We did not end up voting on that. It was just a discussion, and we will come back to that later. We also talked about statistics for water billing. Right now, 78% of people are using the new portal to make their payments. 71% are making online payments, which was previously 49%. We have a 32% cost savings versus what we had with the previous provider. Some feedback that we've gotten is the lower monthly balances are good for people instead of having to save for the quarterly billing, since that was a significant chunk that was coming out, and it's easier to pay it off monthly. The biggest complaint so far is people have not been sure if they have been signed up for auto pay. The vendor has apparently corrected that, though. I was in the same boat. I forgot to pay, but then I got an email saying I paid, so.
Yeah, the April 15th release now includes a watermark on the bill if you're signed up for auto pay. And then the one other positive feedback that we've gotten was residents who have a water issue are noticing it faster. So they're not waiting an entire quarter to get a much larger bill. So we've had a couple residents reach out to us appreciating the increased frequency that they were able to catch and contact a plumber and get the issue fixed.
All right, and then the engineer's report, West Lawn Estates 5th edition, Strand finished drawing the, finished the drawing and shop drawing review for the lift station. They restarted construction in March for Quarry Ridge Phase D. They're gonna restart street building construction on Matt Pass and Michelle Lane, which is anticipated to begin this month. Amazon contractor started public sanitary sewer construction and will install sewer to the new building location. Heyday, they're working on their final submittals before construction begins. Coyle Highlands South Farm Development. The staff had a meeting with the Tierneys on 4/11, which at the time of the meeting was in the future and now is in the past. I imagine we will be getting an update on that at our next meeting. Utility project, Ridge Lift Station is currently delayed, waiting for any development progress. SCADA upgrades, flow meter at well 4 is currently being installed. Hydrite is relocating a water main, which they are putting out to bid and will be paying for. And the farm interceptor is in the early stages of design for sanitary sewer, and that is contingent on a developer's agreement. The director's report. They updated the utilities emergency response plan. Ridge Lift Station lands are in the final steps of being purchased. We've been in touch with Verizon for a thing on the water tower. What's it called? I'm blanking.
Communications.
Communications, yeah. And the PSC report will be submitted later this month. No, it was submitted on 4/9. It was submitted the day of the meeting. And there was a thing that was not on this list, but we discussed that we are not expecting significant rate increases in the future. And we adjourned at 5:21, which was like the longest utility meeting we've had in a long time.
Are there questions or comments for Chris on utility?
I guess the question I have is with the delay of the Ridge Lift Station, do we need to do anything to Trillium, or what is the timeline before Trillium would need investment?
I got you. Yeah. It will ultimately depend on if there's any future development that occurs in the next 3 to 5 years. If that development doesn't move forward, then we will have to look into future planning for that lift station on how we're going to rehab it if development doesn't move forward.
Okay, so 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, other comments? All right, we will move on to Public Works, Properties, and Sustainability Committee. Chris, part 2,
All right.
which includes a discuss and consider.
Yes. We met also on April 9th at 5:30. We approved the minutes from the previous 2 meetings, which included a joint meeting with Utility Commission. We discussed and considered no parking on Clark Street from Grove Street west to the village limits. They tried that out over the weekend with the Alzheimer's run. I assume it went well?
Yes, so we had the Parkinson run as well as a rugby event that following Saturday. So at the previous board meeting, I requested a temporary no parking for 60 days, and then it went to Public Works for their consideration to allow no parking from the village limits on Clark Street all the way to Grove Street. So during large events, specifically when rugby and there's a big event at Bakken Park, we have a difficulty having a two-way traffic. Clark Street was reconstructed in 2022. Yes, super unfortunate regarding this. However, the right-of-way is very limited there, so the road wasn't able to become wider to truly allow for that parallel parking on the north side of the street. Speaking with Josh Straka, the village engineers, and kind of getting some background from what was previously discussed, it was let's see if we can make this area no parking, or allow parking on the north side of Clark Street after it was reconstructed. We've let it go for 2 summers. We've seen a lot of issues with emergency vehicles. When you have a fire truck or an ambulance trying to make their way on Clark Street going east or west, as well as having a car parked in the parallel and the angled parking, there's not quite enough room to allow that emergency vehicle to come through when you have a car coming at them. Kind of a safety concern for all aspects. In an ideal world, if everyone parked properly, both angled parking, parallel parking, and you had minimum space between everybody and everyone was comfortable with that, you probably could make it work. Unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world, and I don't park properly all the time if you see my truck in a parking spot. So it is recommended that we make that area no parking indefinitely.
And we can come back to that in just a minute, because there's one more thing that we talked about in Public Works, and that was discussion of removing the fence on the village property at the corner here at BB and N. They wanted to remove it just to make it easier we're gonna have to maintain the area there in the summer and the winter, so it'll be easier to push snow around there and to mow it if there's no fence there, and we approve that. That is not part of the discuss and consider for tonight. Tonight we're just talking about the Clark and Grove Street no parking. And the engineers and directors' reports were largely the same as utility. The streets projects started last week. Mailers went out to talk to people about parking, but I'm sure everybody's seen the spray paint and flags and construction workers. So.
All right, let's move back to the discuss and consider no parking on Clark Street then.
I do have a question. I would just like to know how it went. If there was sufficient parking, there wasn't people wandering from Progress Drive or anything.
Actually, Progress Drive was busy with Dowdren's event that was also occurring at the same time. Parking was a little on the full side on Vilas Road, which the areas within the village, we enforce the no parking. Clark Street was excellent. We actually could get emergency vehicles through without any concerns or reservations. So again, from police department standpoint, we're looking for a permanent no parking on the north side of Clark Street also.
Chief, as part of the special event permits, is parking in there to have the applicant fill out when they do have larger events like at Bakken Park? So we have an idea of where people might be parking? You think I would have that packet memorized by now, but I don't.
So,
Or Lisa, if you have insights into that.
Yeah, I think we have to be a little careful. We can't stray into the special event discussion.
Well, yes, just something to consider.
One of the things we talked about in Public Works is maybe having a sign saying, hey, there's a parking lot over there. Go park over there. My biggest concern was just people seeing no parking and then going to Progress Drive and then walking down Vilas when there's no path or anything. But if Chief says that it went well. I guess I don't really have any concerns.
Is there any more discussion on that? Otherwise, this is a motion.
So it's not really clear here, but you're saying just the north side. As I read through what's in the
Yeah,
memo, it just says no parking on Clark.
Yeah,
We're just
on
saying on the
the-
north side where it's parallel, not the angled parking.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And that's only until where the curb ends.
I would make the motion that we have no parking on the north side of Clark Street from Grove Street west to the village limits, as discussed.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Heidi, a second by Paula. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, we are on Plan Commission, which has a discuss and consider as well, and I'm going to turn it over to Aaron if that's okay.
Sure.
Or I guess Heidi, you were also at the meeting.
I don't know if you want to give a
Sorry.
general overview. It was a pretty fast meeting, I think.
Right, we're going to talk more about who's going to talk about the meeting than we actually
have,
talked about the
yeah.
meeting. So we met on Wednesday, April 9th at 6:30. It was about a 4-minute meeting. It was one of the shortest plan commission meetings I've been to. So we have consideration, which Aaron can talk more about, the ETJ, which is a development proposal within our extraterritorial jurisdiction, which is kind of a extra donut, we'll say, outside of village limits that we can weigh in on for in the town's jurisdiction. And then we talked about the floodplain zoning ordinance, which is coming down from DNR, and so they're giving us a template that will be implemented, across the whole state. And that was our agenda. So I don't know if you have anything else on the ETJ.
No, fairly simple request, just a property owner looking to create one new lot on a property. So as Heidi was explaining, our ETJ is about 1.5 miles outside the village boundaries. This particular request is about 1.25 miles outside our boundaries, so pretty far out on the edge, but we still have to sign off on it. I had no concerns other than having their surveyor just clean up a couple of minor items on the document.
All right, any comments or questions for Heidi or Aaron?
Not that it matters, but I look at chopping up a nice parcel out there into a T shape. It's really an odd shaped lot, Aaron. And I mean, obviously it's not within our primary jurisdiction, and it's just odd that we would have to approve this, but if the town already has, I mean,
Yeah, it
is
goes
what it-
through the town and the county and us. The way the property owner explained it to me, it's kind of a placeholder for a future house lot. He has other property elsewhere in the town, and he's kind of moving his development right from that property to this property.
It's an extremely odd shaped lot in
is,
a
yeah, I
parcel,
don't
but,
disagree.
it's really the town's call on that piece of it. But
Otherwise, it's discuss and consider.
Can I ask a floodplain question before? So say more about the floodplain, because back in the day, we didn't really have floodplains, but maybe that topography has changed and we do now. So what exactly are we doing with this?
So it's more about the ordinance than defining the floodplain. Is that correct,
Yeah, so
Aaron?
FEMA defines where the floodplains are, not kind of countrywide. The DNR wants all municipalities to have basically the same language, so it all aligns with state statutes and with those federal maps. So this is basically them providing some new language that accommodates some recent law changes.
Because we
kind of
still don't have floodplains like in Cottage Grove, in the village, right? In the town?
I think there's a few small areas
Okay.
along the creeks, but yeah, pretty minor compared to a lot of other places.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
I would make the motion to approve the ETJ certified survey map of the new parcel at 4082 Ridge Road in the town of Cottage Grove with staff conditions.
Is there a second?
Second?
All right, motion by Heidi, second by Paula. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I'm gonna abstain.
One abstention. Motion carries. I'm moving on to the library board, which is me. We met on Wednesday, April 16th at 6 o'clock. We approved our minutes. We moved into new business, so we revised our strategic plan and set some 2025 goals. And if you look, I'll be updating the documents. It'll be on our policies and documents page shortly. But really, our strategic plan and our goals, with some minor adjustments for the years, are going to remain the same. We decided we brainstormed just a touch on what we would be including in some of our prioritization asks of the village board. We discussed the addition of the library programming code of conduct and adding that to our policy manual. We also discussed the establishment of a trust for supplementing library board programming if donations continue to come into the library board, with the use of interest to supplement kind of some of our programs that have a little bit more costs associated with them, some of the kind of the one-off special things that we do. Tracy went over programming reports. We're at 28 programs. And like I mentioned earlier with the sustainability, we're running a big kind of sustainability month, being Earth Day and all things exciting that happen in April. And so there's a couple of events that are coming up this week. And one included, which we already had, was a lunch and learn, but it's also posted. You can go on there and learn all about Pelletary, which is our new waste management or waste provider. I shouldn't say waste management. And he did a really excellent job. You can tell he loves his job a lot, but very relevant for anyone who wants to tune in and kind of take a look at that. We approved our bills list. We are continuing with our memberships to the ALA and the Wisconsin libraries. At future library board meeting, which I think is wrong in the agenda, I think it's May 19th, at 6 p.m. We are going to discuss the fall contract with McFarland, which I confirmed with the library director today that they're excited to continue that partnership. We're working on a community read author for our annual all community read, and we're looking to kind of reorg some of our subcommittees and then appointments of committee members at our next meeting. Any questions or comments?
I had a question. So on the establishment of trust, so how much has the village or the library board received in donations that weren't tied to the referendum that would be put towards a trust?
Right now, it's not a significant amount, so we didn't approve moving forward with that. But just if there was, we communicated out to all individuals that were interested in donating that it's a possibility that they could still do that if they wanted it to go towards library board.
What would the magnitude need to be to make, I mean, what does it cost to administer a trust for staff time and costs?
Yeah, so we would do that. We would ultimately have Ellers be the one that manages that portfolio. And so that is always determined on whatever the portfolio value is a determinant, up to so much value is at X rate. I think they would ultimately, I would have them provide a recommendation. I likely probably need at least 100,000 or 50 to 100,000 to make it worth it. Otherwise, we'd probably just recommend sticking it at a CD. And obviously, as it grows, we could go that. When Cindy and I talked about the trust, the clear definition of what the donor or donors would like for those funds to be used was the one benefit we were looking at, that at least it would be clear and defined. If resources are going into this, they have to be used for Y, just so it kind of lasts longer than staff and board.
Could we, when that conversation happens again on the trust, could we look at using, nothing against Ellers, but if it's a smaller trust, perhaps one of our local financial institutions?
I think most libraries go through the Madison Community Foundation.
For
that
library
sort of
trust?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not like something that you would typically just set up with like a bank, and, because I know the local banks have lots of trust accounts. So I just want to err on the side of local if we can.
Yeah, the board ultimately makes that decision. I guess correction. The library board statutes are very clear that any resources that are appropriated or raised would be at the sole direction of the library board. So the library board would ultimately be the one deciding what institution. The village board can make the decision on the remaining institutions.
So in the true words of a trust, where you've got beneficiaries and clear identification of what the funds are to be used for, that couldn't even happen given the fact the library board has the ultimate say. They could honor it, but the documents of a trust really wouldn't apply.
This happens oftentimes with cemeteries and libraries, where they do establish trust with defined expectation. So a lot of the times what happens, and the example that Cindy provided, the interest is used a lot of the times as a reoccurring funding mechanism for annual expenditures, with municipalities being squeezed on the levy limit perspective. So it's a way to continue to operate a program without going into proceeds. Now, obviously, you have to have a good rate of return in order for the portfolio not to diminish. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, the trust definitions would have to be defined by the library board, and then would ultimately, I think, technically, and I don't know if this is Rick's area of law, the library board could amend the direction of the trust.
And I think,
Not my
Paul, I
area.
can take that feedback back to the library board. They'd be, if we get there, be happy to have that conversation.
Yeah, so that's not my area of law, but we do have people in my firm that work on like trust and estates issues. So if that's something that is a direction that they want to go, we can certainly provide assistance.
All right, so we'll move on to reports from village officers. So Rick, what do you got?
So there's an outline in here just about some like basic 101 local government issues with like open meetings, public records. I'm just gonna walk through it pretty quickly. I know some of you have heard this multiple times now, so, but we just thought it might be a benefit to some of the newer members. So start off with the open meetings law. So all governmental bodies in Wisconsin are subject to Wisconsin open meeting law, which means that if there's a meeting of a governmental body, it has to be preceded by notice and open to the public. So the bodies that it applies to would be the village board, any committees, or any like subcommittee that's created by the village board through a motion or ordinance or order. So it can be pretty broad, actually. When talk a little bit about like how people get in trouble with the open meetings law. So it's not just like, we have our village board meeting twice a month, right? A meeting could occur if you have a quorum, so a majority of people of the board at one spot, and they're discussing village business. So the open meetings law presumes that there's a meeting taking place if you have a majority there. It's a rebuttable presumption, so if you're there and you're not talking about village business, like let's just say you're at the grocery store or something like that, that's not an open meetings law violation. But if you're, at some community event and then, you've got 4 people there and you're all talking about a specific item that's going to be on the village board agenda, that would technically be a meeting under the open meetings law. And since there wouldn't be notice prior to that meeting, then it would technically be an open meeting violation. The other thing to keep in mind is that it's not just a majority. If you have enough people present to affect the outcome of a vote, that would also be a meeting. So with a 7-member board, that means if you've got 4 people there, there's a presumption of a meeting. Here, we're a little different because we've got 6 members right now. So technically, if there are 3 of you in the same room, it's enough to defeat any action that comes up before the village board. So if there are 3 members present in the same location, that would be technically a meeting. So related to that would be what's known as a walking quorum. So that's like when you call somebody that's on the board, you ask them what their thoughts are on something. Then you call somebody else on the board to ask them what their thoughts are. So it's not like you're all at the same spot, but because of this communication that you're having with other individual board members, you sort of determined what the outcome would be. So walking quorums are also prohibited. So again, because we're dealing with a 6-member board at the moment, if you talk to 2 other members of the board about something that's going to be before the village board, that would be a walking quorum and potentially an open meetings violation. So just something to keep in mind until we get another trustee on here. So that also applies to like something that requires a 2/3 vote. So if we were to amend the budget, that requires a 2/3 vote. So if you're talking to enough people that would be able to defeat a budget amendment, that even though you don't have 4 people or even 3 people in a room, if it's enough to defeat that, it would be a meeting. Email, basically, if it's a one-way communication and there's no like direct responses coming back, there's no conversation, that's okay, but it's really just sharing information. So what you'll see as trustees is something from Matt or myself, we'll send it to the village board BCC'd. It's just meant for information. We're not looking for you to respond all. That's why it's BCC'd. Also discourage just sending out your thoughts about things in an email to other board members. Attorney General just strongly discourages that. Social media, also that could be an issue if there's a post on like some website and then you've got board members that are all commenting on the same thing. That could technically be a meeting because you've got sort of these public comments and you're able to determine like where somebody might stand on a village issue. So these are more just like things to be on the lookout for. I'm not trying to scare anybody, maybe a little, but just, just things to be aware of. Closed sessions, usually Matt and I or Larry, we're all like communicating about when a closed session would be appropriate. Typically, it would be for communicating with the attorney about actual litigation or potential litigation against the village. Employment-related decisions, we can go into closed session, or bargaining, negotiating, contracts, sales, anything where there's sort of a negotiation strategy, we can go into closed session for that. We generally don't do closed sessions that are not noticed, but technically we could have a spontaneous one, but we try to avoid those. I don't think we've ever done one here, so. Any questions about open meetings? Okay.
I have one actually.
Sure.
So, oh, I'm sorry, did I cut you
No,
off?
you were first.
Oh, so like I want to attend as many committee meetings as possible just to like get up to speed. But like if I show up at a committee meeting, right, even if I'm not sitting on the committee, I can just be in the audience, but that won't trigger anything, right? We're good there?
Generally, yes. If we know that there will be, or we think there's a likelihood of enough village board members being there to constitute a quorum, we do have to provide a notice that
Okay.
just says, there may be a quorum of the village board here, but no discussion of the village board will take place. So sometimes community events will just put something out like that.
And at the bottom of our agendas, at least on the library board, when we put that, like a little notice that there might be other board members.
Do we do that on most committees too?
Standard language.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
That's
to
standard
cover
language.
ourselves.
Okay, perfect. And then just, you touched on emails. Is there a statute of limitations as to how long you have to keep those? And the reason I ask is because when I was a citizen member of Deer Grove EMS back in 2012, I never got a clear answer on that. So I literally have emails from 2012 in my personal email in its own Deer Grove EMS folder.
Generally, the rule is 7 years.
Okay,
There's a whole lot of exceptions to that. There's like like the state records board has like a 100-page manual, but generally 7 years, I think, for emails.
okay. I might delete those now then.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question, if I may, Rick,
Sure.
about a walking quorum. So say there's something on like the parks agenda that I'm super passionate about. I'm not on the parks committee. Can I go and ask 4 members or whatever is the majority how they're going to vote? If like, even if they don't know that I'm asking everybody?
If it's something that's coming to like the village board, I would say no. If you're a citizen and you're just asking, like, let's say you're not a part of the village board, right? And you're just a citizen going and asking people how they're gonna vote. There's nothing wrong with that, just as long as you're not sharing that information with the others. Because at that point, you would potentially know, I guess, but you wouldn't be in a position where you're gonna actually be voting or like, so as long as like there's a wall between how that information is conveyed, if that makes sense.
I think that makes sense. I wasn't planning on doing it.
Yeah.
It just popped
I
in
would
my
say,
head, so I
like,
thought I'd ask.
I don't have an issue with a citizen doing that. As a board member, I would strongly discourage that.
If it's, I can understand it if it's like something that's gonna then come before the board, but if it's something that's like, solely under the purview of the Parks Department, same thing, just to be safe?
Generally, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
So briefly about ethics, basically if there's any vote that you will have a direct financial stake in, or an immediate family member, which is defined as somebody related by blood or marriage who receives 50% of their support from you, you cannot vote on that. Or if it's like an association or a company that you are associated with. So, or you can't receive anything, like somebody can't pay you to vote a certain way. So pretty basic things. One really important thing to keep in mind is if you are a part of like some business or organization that does business with the village, there is a provision that says that even if you abstain, if you make a contract with the village and you're gonna receive more than $15,000, that is a felony. So even if you abstain and don't participate, it doesn't matter. It's just if you are a village board member and you own a business and you've got more than $15,000 in receipts, that is a felony. So those are the big ones as far as the ethics go.
Questions or comments for Rick on that? All right, moving on, discuss and consider committee appointments for 2025 vacancies. So there's a memo and a list of committee recommendations from myself to the board for consideration tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the committee appointments as presented.
And I would second.
There's a motion by Chris, a second by Heidi. Any more discussion? Sorry.
Yeah. So I feel like we, especially the two new people, like we didn't get a lot of information as to the current committee assignments and who expired which year. I did request that of Lisa. I don't know if Renee was able to get that, but there was like a lot of questions that I had because of that. And then looking at kind of the breakdown of what was recommended plus what Lisa provided to me, it seems like the committee assignments are pretty out of whack in terms of how many committees people have. So for instance, Cindy, you have 10, but I know a lot of those are mandated in ordinance. Heidi has 8, Chris 4, Pete 4, Paula 3, and Renee 2. And, you know, for me, that just isn't really an equitable workload. We have people that want to step to the table and do things. You know, I think that in terms of, you know, when we talk about honoring diversity in our mission, vision, and values, it should also include diversity of thought and varied perspectives. And so I think what I would like to see is kind of a different arrangement that gives more to, like, spreads the wealth a little bit. Also really aligning people with their interests or, you know, their expertise. I think when you put varied perspectives together on a committee, not only does that build trust with residents, but it's also going to respond to the full spectrum of our community, right? I mean, we have, in essence, a split board right now, right? But there are people who voted for us, right, that want us to serve in these roles. And so I'd like us to go back to the drawing board on this a little bit, as well as to involve citizens. That was the other thing. We didn't get any citizen applications or get to see any of that. I did request that from Lisa. I know that there are 2 citizens that applied for committees that aren't listed anywhere. So I'd really like for this to be different. And I don't know how we want to go about doing that, but I'm not going to vote on the recommendations as presented.
So these were my recommendations based on vacancies that needed to be filled. I think that in terms of board members being kind of slotted in here, it's where the vacancies were left by the departing board members. I had reached out to both of you and asked for to sit on, and Pete too, to sit on certain committees. I know that Renee didn't want to sit on a couple, and that's why there's a disproportionate number of board members that are assigned to certain committees. I received a lot of emails from individuals that wanted to be on, from citizen members that wanted to be on the different committees, and so this was a lot of work went into slotting everyone into the appropriate spots to make sure that everything was filled.
Did we reach out to the existing committee members who had terms expiring to see if they wanted to continue?
Most of them reached out to me, and then we did a social media post. I know that at some of the committees, it was also brought up to if they were interested in continuing their within second term, that they could do that.
Because the 3 plan commission members that are being replaced per this said that they didn't hear from anyone.
And none of those plan commission members reached out to the board either, to myself.
Did they even know they were expiring? I mean, I don't know.
My assumption is that yes, if you have a committee position, you know when it expires.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I think about Don Brinkmeyer, who's served the village faithfully for 30 years on the plan commission, and I talked to him over the weekend, and he wants to continue to serve.
I did email Don, and he never emailed me back, but he is on the Housing Chapter Update Committee, and I believe that there was communication with village staff to him through that.
I guess I just would advocate for a different system, because I won't vote for a broad motion on this.
And maybe Rick, can you kind of jump in here and talk about the system?
So as far as process goes, the ordinances say that the president appoints subject to village board approval. So it's really the board just makes an up or down vote. So what we could do is vote on these as a whole. We could separate some committees out if that's the direction that the board wanted to go, or separate some positions out. Otherwise, it's an up or down vote, and I guess if the vote is no, then the village president would make further appointments at the next meeting for the board's consideration.
Rick, there's one exception. Board of Review needs to be appointed tonight with this meeting scheduled on May 5th. And those, outside of the village board president swap with John and Cindy, Heidi has sat on that committee before.
And I don't know if it's true of all the committees. I looked at a few, and I'm not sure if on Board of Review, but basically if the ordinance says that if the person serves a 3-year term, but if their successor has not been appointed, their term continues past May 1st. So I don't know if that's true of all the committees, but it's on for Plan Commission. I think it was Parks. So there were a few that has that provision. I'm not sure about Board of Review, but I would agree that that's an important one to have filled.
My recommendation, just with the sensitivity of that specific one, that gets appointed tonight.
So there is a motion and a second to approve the appointments for vacancies as presented. Roll call vote.
Stoa,
Yes.
Severson,
No.
Murphy,
Aye.
Cal Nelson,
Aye.
Dahl,
No.
Benzo,
No.
3-3.
I have a question for that then, Rick. So for the committees, like law enforcement meets tomorrow night. We need 2 more board members. Otherwise, it's just going to be a 3-person meeting?
Didn't you say that the term would continue until they've been replaced?
But
Or is
they're
that-
board members, so
I
it
think
was
that's
John
for
and-
the
John and
citizen
Paula.
members.
Or,
Yep.
no, excuse me, not Paula, Sarah.
I would also add that EMS meets on Thursday as well.
Also, the Housing Chapter Update Committee, we're trying to have our first meeting on May 7th. It doesn't have any members yet because it's a new committee, so
Didn't John appoint those before?
not officially. He was discussed it.
The individuals that he was going to appoint are listed there.
Is that something that's like an ad hoc committee? Does that need to be approved by the board?
I think that's what Rick and Larry said, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for the ad hoc committees. That's correct.
I just say that I do have a big committee load. However, I was asked to pick up additional committees after my initial committees because they were turned down or scheduling conflicts. But many of my committees only meet like once a year or have not met in a few years. So that's, I guess, some of the background on that, but it was kind of a second pass. Will you do cleanup and pick up an extra load because those committees were turned down?
We are down we obviously have a 6-person board, and so that is also why that there's a heavier load on some individuals right now.
Well, I would make a motion that we approve the Law Enforcement Committee and the Cottage Grove Fire District Commission and the Deer Grove EMS Commission with one modification, which is to replace Dr. Renee for Peter's spot.
So which
So-
ones? Could you repeat that again? Law enforcement?
The Law Enforcement Committee as presented, the Cottage Grove Fire District Commission as presented, the Deer Grove EMS Commission as presented, but then the caveat of having Dr. Renee instead of Peter.
So we wouldn't be able to sub any in unless Cindy
Oh,
makes the appointment.
Okay.
So it's just an up or down vote for the board's decision.
got it. So chop that last part off the motion.
I'll second for sake of discussion, but we do have board of review, which is like
Oh, I'm sorry,
statutorily
yeah,
required.
that's-
Yep, and Board of Review.
So 4 of them.
I amend my motion to include Board of Review.
And I'll still second
All right,
that.
there's a motion by Paula and a second by Heidi for those committees, and we'll do a roll call vote on them.
Can we
I do want to.
discuss first?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not gonna vote for these to be separated. This is the same, doing them all in a group is the same process as we've done in the past. We haven't had any issues. More than probably half the people here are left over from John, so to say that there's no diversity I don't think that's accurate. And again, these are up to the village president to appoint, so.
Yeah, I totally agree, but when you've got Dr. Renee's only on 2 and Cindy's on 10, and again, some of them are only like ad hoc, but it just does not provide that diversity of thought.
And that's something that's happened in the past. People, may I finish? People who are new to the board start slow. I started with 2, I think, and then as people wanted to leave, Heidi wanted to leave Public Works, so I took it up. There will probably be more in the future. It's just hard when there's, you're just starting out, you're not sure what you're gonna do. You
I
get more
did
in the
make a
future.
request of positions I would be interested in per your email, and I did not get any that I asked for. So I would say that, yes, I am new, but there are some boards that I think I could maybe contribute to.
So specifically I'd reached out and asked for, to fill certain vacancies. And that's where those lists came from. Most of these decisions that are made at these committees, just about all of them are gonna come back to the village board. As you just saw, we went through the reports from all of the different boards, committees, and commissions, so that discussion happens at the village board level. I'll just go back to the point about subbing out Peter for Renee on EMS, and that is totally, I would not have an issue with that. You will need to chair that committee this year. It's the village's responsibility for that. Just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that.
I've chaired it before.
But I agree, there's a lot of time and thought that went into this. The citizen members reached out and showed interest in serving their communities by sitting, on these different boards, committees, and commissions. And I think as the 7th board member is appointed, there will be some rearranging of some of these. There's an asterisk next to where I would suggest some rearrangement when that 7th board member is appointed as well.
I may have missed this, so I apologize, but have all of the individuals from the community that have reached out for a position, were there more community members asking for a position than
In
being
some
able-
cases, yes. For example, the library board, I think, has a bench of about 7 people deep.
My other question then, if Parks is not considered tonight, we also have a meeting on Thursday. So that that would not have a board person, so you'd have a chair pro tem that would be selected at the meeting, or how would that work?
Yes, so the clerk would basically call the meeting to order, and they would, if they don't have like a designated vice chair, then they would just elect somebody as their first item.
I guess my thing is, the community voted for a split board, right? I mean, we're 3 and 3. And we need to find a way to work together, and that starts at the committee level. So stacking a committee with 5 people who are all of the same thought process is not gonna get us to that goal. And I think, you know, having people with different viewpoints, you know, can bring up blind spots that maybe somebody hasn't thought about before. And again, we wanna reflect the values of our community. So I think there are some different options that we could do. For instance, I look at Plan Commission. You've got 5 folks listed who are all of kind of in the same camp, right? Can we take 2 out and keep Don Brinkmeyer and Fred Schulze in, right? And you still have 3
I'm
of
sorry.
the 5.
Not to interrupt you, this is not comprehensive of all the committee members that sit on each committee, though. These are just the replacements. So there
Right.
are other committee.
Right, but you
members.
also, like, we didn't have that information. I mean, Renee and I didn't even have email until right before the meeting. So we're really flying by the seat of our pants on this. And really, to get the big picture, the scope of everything, to be able to look at this community and do what's right for them, we need all the information. And we need to have feedback, and we need to have people from differing backgrounds, economic, I'm not gonna say it right, but like diversity, just like our community. And this does not reflect it. I'm sorry.
So by that train of thought, the current plan commission has 5 people who I might not agree with, so how is that fair? On plan commission.
I'm not saying it's gonna be a perfect thing. I'm saying at least have a couple in there, like have
There's still
one
gonna
or
So
be a
there are
couple
some
on
other committee members that are not listed here. So you can go onto the websites, and the committee members should be listed on all of the websites. If you have questions about the agenda, please reach out before a meeting and make sure that staff can address some of those questions ahead of time, so that we aren't taking up time in board meetings to go over minute details that could have been answered.
We didn't have email
beforehand.
until today, so we're doing the best we can. I think right now, there are 2 additional members of Plan Commission that are not listed here, so that's 5 and 2. All we need to do is go 4 and 3. Let's just make a couple compromises and have some diversity of thought on these committees.
So if we're going to take Plan Commission specifically here, you have to understand that Plan Commission has a guiding document that should be guiding decision-making within that comprehensive land plan. Again, these decisions are recommendations that come back to the village board, and we ultimately have the say in the village board. There is a motion and a second on the table.
No.
There was a second one to take out a couple of committees and move a couple of them forward. Can you please read that off?
Sure, the motion by Paula to approve LEC Fire Commission, Deer Grove EMS, and Border Review. Seconded by Heidi.
Right. On the motion to approve those committees as presented. All those in favor? Or roll call vote, sorry, go ahead.
Dahl,
Aye.
Cal Nelson,
Aye.
Benzo,
Aye.
Murphy,
Aye.
Stoa,
No.
Severson,
Aye.
Motion carries.
5-1 carried.
Motion carries. I'm going to make a motion to approve the rest of the committees as presented.
And I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Do a roll call vote again.
Cal Nelson,
Aye.
Stoa,
Yes.
Benzo,
No.
Dahl,
No.
Murphy,
Aye.
Severson,
No.
3-3.
Motion does not pass. Does the board have additional recommendations to move these forward so we can continue work?
is there a way that you can collect information from us in terms of any sort of committee suggestions or movements that doesn't violate yeah, I'm looking
Yeah,
at
we wouldn't
you.
be able to have, like, she can't collect enough information where she would know sort of like the outcome of how the board would vote. And like I said, these are her, like the village president's appointments subject to confirmation. So I guess if you have comments or suggestions, now would be appropriate.
Okay.
But sharing them by email would just get a little in a gray area.
Yeah, I mean, my suggestion, I saw, well, first of all, if Renee could get the full committee list and the things that I requested one-on-one with Lisa, I think that would be helpful for the whole roster.
She can make that.
Sorry, but I'm just, I know the things to ask for, and so I've been doing that, so I just don't want to assume. But, and then the applications, we have 2 applicants that aren't listed anywhere. One is Kristen, what was her name? She applied for library board, but I know you said you had a big bench.
Yep.
You know, if she would be interested in something else. And then the other one who has applied that has interest in a committee is Mark Spahos. So wherever he could potentially be tagged in. I would love to see Don Brinkmeyer at the very least stay on Plan Commission. He is like the Plan Commission historian. He's, you know, knows a lot more even than me. So those are just some of my suggestions for people.
Yeah, I would say the balance that Paula has talked about would be great. I'll be honest with you, you know, not to look at the community members, you know, in any way, shape, or form. I think everybody adds a lot of value. I do have a concern with Dave Peterson being on the Plan Commission in the sense that he's a Dane County supervisor. And I just do not, and I absolutely am concerned about conflict of, and I know he would recuse himself, but I don't think it's worthy of putting somebody on a commission when we've got a lot of other people that would be willing to serve, when we have somebody that would have the potential for a conflict of interest. So I certainly would like to see Dave replaced with another community member. Certainly, we've got others that have expressed interest.
So one of the library board is full with a large waiting list. There is no finance and personnel committee, so we can't fill a seat on that, which was another recommendation, I believe. You're making the suggestion to remove David Peterson from Plan Commission and replace with, I guess I can bring this back at the next meeting.
I mean, Mark has expressed an interest in serving.
He did not submit for Plan Commission. All of the individuals did. I did not hear from any of the existing.
Well, certainly Don Brinkmeyer.
He did not
But
show intent.
you didn't ask him, and he.
I did email him on other, and he never responded back, which is why it is situated the way it is.
I wonder if he didn't get your email because he said nobody reached out to him, so.
I can't help it if people aren't checking their emails. We need to move this forward so that we can continue working as a village and all of our committees and commissions. We have a lot scheduled. So I guess I'll make a motion in order to move this forward that we approve the committees for appointments that are left on the list with the exception of Plan Commission, and take that one out.
I'll second to continue discussion.
Do we have a description on the ad hoc housing chapter update committee? This is all new to me.
It's been in previous agendas, I believe.
There's no description on the website at all.
Yeah, we're kind of waiting to have a meeting scheduled to put that on the website. We're talking about doing that next week. basically, we're working with Dane County staff they have a program set up where free of charge, they're helping communities update those chapters. It helps with grant eligibility and things like that.
So the makeup of the Ad Housing Chapter Committee, I listed those here because that's how the committee was recommended to be formed, and these were the appointments from John. It just never got to the approval stage.
And they don't have the authority to approve the plan. They're kind of guiding
Again,
the process, then the plan commission and board have to approve it.
And then ultimately come back to the village board,
Yeah.
as all things do.
I just have something to add since I sit on Plan Commission, so I was there for the discussion of that. And in order to be eligible, like Aaron said, for various grants, you have to have the housing chapter updated within 5 years. And this is like grants to help like small businesses put in infrastructure to build on like a vacant lot on Cottage Grove Road, for example. So to be eligible for that, you have to have updates within the last 5 years for your housing chapter. And we're getting close to that 5-year deadline. So Dane County isn't like providing what their interpretation of what our housing chapter should be, but they have like standardized questions to help us do outreach to the community, to gather that information, because otherwise we just have Aaron, a one-person department, building the surveys, and they've already done some of that groundwork that will help us be able to tailor, the information to our community and update that housing chapter so then they're eligible for those kinds of grants. So to have a steering committee for that work then sends it back to Plan Commission and then to the board.
I'd love to serve on that one.
It should also be noted, sorry, she said she wanted to serve on that. Sorry to interrupt you. We were also supposed to start in January, and our first meeting is not scheduled till May, so we're already a bit behind.
So there is a motion and a second. And we'll do a roll call vote again. And
We
this
can have
is-
discussion.
do you want to just remind us what we're,
Sure.
No more discussion?
do you have an additional comment?
Well, no, I guess when we were talking earlier, the board, the committees that have to be approved, we approved everything except Park and Rec, that meets, and I think Heidi brought that one up. So the motion is to approve everything except Plan Commission?
Right now, I pulled Plan Commission out of the motion.
Could we pull budget review and also the ad hoc housing? Because that has a Plan Commission rep component.
And I'd like to add, I don't know that I can make a fair vote because I don't have the updated committee list.
So I'll amend my recommendation or my motion to remove Plan Commission, the ad hoc housing chapter, and the budget review, but I'm concerned that there are members of this board that aren't adequately informed in order to be making decisions tonight on any of this.
So Lisa, is that something that you could send out? I mean, because I never had that either. I had to sort of backtrack everything by looking at the website, at least to try to come up with who's currently on the board, and then in Cindy's sheet, who are the new people, and how does the makeup of the commission actually look? I didn't have that, so I think that's probably something that most of the members don't have, and I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, Renee.
Yes. Yes, a list can be sent out. We have a list that we keep internally of the appointments, the terms, and that can be sent out to the board.
There is a motion and a second, but.
Do you want a roll call vote on it?
So right now, it is to take up, can you remind me what I just said?
Yeah, to approve the committee list, with the exception of the ones that have already been approved, with the exception of removing Plan Commission, Budget Review, and Ad Hoc Housing.
I guess put budget review back in and ad hoc housing back in, and that's my motion. So just taking out Plan Commission.
Just taking out Plan
Yes.
Commission, okay. All right. Dahl?
No.
Severson,
No.
Benzo,
No.
Cal Nelson,
Aye.
Murphy,
Aye.
and Stoa.
Aye.
Okay, my recommendation moving forward is that everyone needs to read the agenda items, and the agenda draft comes out beforehand, that if you have questions, you need to reach out to staff, and we need to be a little bit more prepared moving forward. So my plan is to bring this back to the board at the next meeting.
I agree with you, Cindy. However, I did not have access to my email until right before the meeting tonight.
So is there a need then to approve Park and Rec and NatVig tonight because they meet before we meet on the 5th? Or, Rick, did the current, or those that aren't new, did they extend their term?
So we've got NatVig. I don't know if the ordinances actually talk about that one.
That's all board members, Rick. There's no
Yeah.
citizen members on that.
So you had NatVig, and what was the other one?
Park and Rec,
Parks and Rec.
that meets on the 24th.
Yeah, so Parks and Recreation, the citizen members would continue on. The trustee members, would also, well, yeah, so the village, like for Parks and Rec, the language says village board member of the committee shall be appointed by the village president, subject to confirmation. They'll serve a one-year term until his or her successor is appointed and confirmed. So the trustee members would still continue on, subject to the confirmation of their successors.
So in terms of this committee, the citizen appointments for Parks and Rec, I guess is the one that's coming up. We would potentially not have a quorum be able to move forward.
If the citizen members continue on, that's the
Yeah, so
ordinance?
that's both board members and citizen members can
so we're okay.
continue
We do
on.
have one citizen member that's already said that they can't attend, so, you know, if we didn't approve it, and, so it would be 3, and hopefully all 3 would show up.
All right, we'll move on then. So communications and miscellaneous business, first is consider approval of vouchers.
I'll make the motion to approve the vouchers as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Heidi, a second by Paula. All those in favor, or any more discussion, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence, I'll open it up to board members if they've received correspondence to share.
I'll put in my plug for the Municipality magazine. It's a magazine that you'll receive in the mail. It's provided by the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and they have themes every month, and they have excellent articles about open government, about various, I guess, challenges that are across the state, such as housing. So that's a correspondence that you should be receiving, and I think it's an excellent resource. I took the Local Government 101 course provided by the League. I think they do it a little different now. You know, COVID kind of changed some things, so I think there's a virtual, or they're coming out with a virtual training. Anyway, it was a very helpful training session, and the magazine is always very interesting.
That's Heidi's.
I put in a
twice
plugs
month
for that
plug
lot.
for the municipality. Other correspondence from other board members? All right, I did receive correspondence from a few members of the community asking this board to consider a community space at the Learning Ladder site. I also, the owners did reach out and say that they really would like it and prefer it to be a part of the community, but they do have additional offers. So if this is something that the board would like to move forward with, it can be an agenda item on the next meeting, knowing that there's a possibility that the opportunity won't be available. So So I'll just look for thumbs up or thumbs down for next board meeting. Yay, nay?
Well, to put an agenda item on, there's just a motion and a second, so, yeah.
Looking for
Just need one.
interest in this. Okay. That is a, would you like to see this as a discussion item on the next, if you're interested in looking at community space? I guess that would be a motion for me to add it to the next agenda item on the next board meeting, if there's a second. And if not, we can move on.
I mean, I think it's a valuable discussion to have overall in the future, but as, you know, there's a lot of other discussions to have with part of it. So I think you talked about strategic planning, so maybe that's something that we have on a future agenda item to kind of think about how we're gonna do that. Thank you.
Upcoming community events. There's a Chamber of Commerce meeting on Thursday, which the village is presenting at. Anyone else have community events?
It's the e-waste event on Saturday and the drug take-back day, which maybe Chief was already gonna jump in there with that.
Just gonna put a plug out there. Drug Take Back is on Saturday at MSB from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Drive-through service again this year, so we'll dispose of it properly.
Thank you.
And the e-waste event is at the Old Bonnie shop, the Public Works shop, where compost is located. So that'll be from 8 to 12 for any e-waste drop-off.
Thank you. All right, future agenda items. We'll have the trustee in 2 meetings, trustee applicants, interviews, appointments. And at the next board meeting, the potential for revised committee members. Anyone else have any other agenda items that they'd like to present with a second can be added?
I would like to see us discuss and consider reestablishing the Joint Emergency Operations Committee with the Town of Cottage Grove.
Is there a second to add that to the agenda? Is there direction that you need to give staff in order to make that information?
I don't believe so. I believe that I might have the historical documents, but I can just touch base with them, right? Okay. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that it's on their radar for any documents that need to be added to the agenda.
Correct.
And if it's a joint potential committee, obviously discussion with our joint partners.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just generally speaking, so like the first time something's discussed, we would need direction from the board before staff's gonna spend time on it. So really the first step is really just, in this instance, Paul would probably just draft a brief memo together, and we can do some searching for past documents or whatever, and we won't spend, a lot of time on it initially until there's more discussion.
And
Yeah.
just from a practical standpoint, do I send that to staff? Do I send that to you?
You can CC me on it, but send it to staff.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Cindy, there'll be a sale, so we approved the preliminary, obviously, the pre-sale report, but potential approval of the bonds on May 5th. I do think I was originally gonna put on the agenda to discuss the budget timeline and prioritization. I do think it would be a good idea to wait to see what the possible appointment, so I'll reschedule that till May 19th possibly, or whatever that Monday is. And then Baker Tilly will also be presenting at the second meeting in May as well.
All right, with that,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
all right. Non-debatable, all those in favor?
Aye.